President Trump now bringing lawmakers from both sides into the White House Situation Room, and we're waiting to hear whether they've figured out a way to get the entire federal government back up and running. After Wall Street's worst year in a decade, the Dow had a shaky start to 2019. We'll look at what's happening and why. Plus, the incoming Senator Mitt Romney taking aim at President Trump. Today, the president hits back. That's all ahead in this hour. I'm Trace Gallagher in for Shep. President Trump a short time ago sounding off on everything from immigration and Syria to Kim Jong-un and Kanye West during a cabinet meeting. We'll get into all of it. But we begin with day 12 of the government shutdown and a meeting scheduled to start any moment between the president and top lawmakers from both parties. It's happening in the White House Situation Room, so no cameras. But we say lawmakers arrive, or we saw them moments ago arrive. We'll keep an eye on the West Wing to see if anybody talks about potential progress. In that cabinet meeting, President Trump insisted he will keep the government closed for as long as it takes until he gets money for his border wall.
So how long do you think the government is going to stay partially shut down?
Could be a long time, and it could be quickly. Could be a long time. It's too important a subject to walk away from. I think the people of this country think I'm right. Again, I could have done nothing. I could have had a lot easier presidency by doing nothing. But I'm here. I want to do it right.
Incoming House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer are set to attend today's meeting. Leader Pelosi has accused President Trump of using the shutdown to try to force an expensive and ineffective wall upon the American people. And Leader Schumer has told President Trump, "You will not get your wall." Meantime, hundreds of thousands of federal workers are caught in the crossfire and going without paychecks. Let's get to the White House correspondent Kevin Corke, who was inside the president's cabinet meeting earlier today. Kevin.
And what a meeting it was. Let me just tell you, Trace, it lasted about an hour, 45 minutes or so that we were just inside, and it was wide-ranging, the president touching on a number of different topics. Most notably, as you said, listen, this afternoon's meeting about the shutdown is really about border security. It's going to involve the folks from ICE, Border Patrol, and other officials from DHS. And effectively what they're trying to do, Trace, is they're trying to make the argument that now is the time to put politics aside. Fund this wall, but don't take my word for it as the president. Take the word of the people actually on the ground. That was the message from the president today. So that cabinet meeting that I mentioned earlier today, really, he said it was about safety and security of the American people. He also said it was about an exploding humanitarian crisis that's obviously taking place along our southern border. And you may be wondering, so who's going to be in this meeting this afternoon? Well, I've got a few names I can share with you. It's Pelosi, Hoyer, McCarthy, Scalise, McConnell, Thune, Schumer, and Durbin. Each recalcitrant, as you pointed out, however, with federal workers caught in the crossfire. Now, for the folks at home, Trace, that may not understand this, the Democrats say, listen, we want border security. We just don't want to pay for a wall. We think it's ineffective. We can use technology and do other things. But the president said today, without a wall, it won't do enough. And that's his argument, and that's the argument, apparently, officials from ICE and Border Patrol will make this afternoon as well. Trace?
So in essence, Kevin, we're going into this meeting at kind of a standstill. What are we hearing from Democrats ahead of the meeting?
Couple things. I think the strategy, quite honestly, is let's pull him down off that $5.6 billion number, because everybody wants to save face here and get government workers back to work. You've been in this beltway. You know how this works. Americans all over the country not only rely on their jobs, they're relying on their leadership to get the job done. Interesting, before I tell you about a tweet that we saw from Nancy Pelosi yesterday where she sort of rejected this olive branch the president was sort of floating out there about maybe making a deal, I want to share a quick soundbite from the president from the cabinet meeting. He was asked about this idea that maybe a wall is immoral. Listen to how he compared it to another famous wall.
When they say the wall's immoral, well, then you got to do something about the Vatican, because the Vatican has the biggest wall of them all. The wall is immoral. Look at all of the countries that have walls, and they work 100%. It's never going to change. A wall is a wall. The other's just, I mean, we could have all the drones flying over the people last night as they tried to rush the border. The only thing that stopped them was the wall.
So that's the president's position. Now, you may have also noticed, for the folks who have been watching this afternoon, the presumptive incoming speaker is already here at the White House for the meeting. Yesterday, I mentioned she had a tweet where she effectively shot down the president's offer. She said this: we're fortunate as Democrats to have a great opportunity to show how we will govern responsibly and quickly pass our plan to end the irresponsible #Trump shutdown. So you get a sense, Trace, of what the mood is like, and of course, as I get more information and material, I'll be certain to pass it along to you. But for now, back to you, my friend.
Yeah, back to you with that breaking news. Kevin Corke live for us at the White House. Kevin, thank you. Team Fox coverage continues. The Fox Business Network's Edward Lawrence reporting live on Capitol Hill. Edward.
Trace, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi standing firm, as you heard Kevin Corke say, that she says she's ready to put forth a series of bills that would fund the government. However, there's a catch. No extra money for a border wall. Also, it would only fund the Department of Homeland Security through February 8th. Sort of their way of saying that they're doing something here. Expect that vote tomorrow. Now, freshman lawmakers on the Democratic side coming into the House already talking about this. Freshman lawmaker Max Rose says that he does not support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. He will be voting tomorrow on that once he's sworn in, but he says there needs to be a deal on this border wall.
In this instance, the president's actions have been embarrassing. Okay, the president said on national TV, he said, I'd be happy to shut down the government. I'm happy to do so, all to achieve what I believe is a vanity project at the southern border.
Yeah, but any series of bills that goes through needs to get 60 votes in the Senate in order to pass. And right now, all they're looking at, or Democrats are looking towards Mitch McConnell. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell does say that he would not put forth a bill in the Senate that the president would not sign. So right now we're at an impasse. Trace?
Yeah, we were kind of talking about the White House, the Democrats and Republicans, not really a lot of talk going on over there. What about on Capitol Hill? Are both parties talking to each other there?
And that's an interesting thing. From the Republicans' House standpoint, they feel like they've done their job. They passed a bill at the end of last year that had the $5.6 billion the president wants in the border wall. Listen.
We sent a bill over to the Senate that included disaster funding, included relief for the disasters, and also included border wall funding. And that would have done it, but it got over to the Senate. Now Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats are the ones who are holding it up. So we did our job in the Republican majority in the House.
And Democrats digging at this point, those Democrats in the Senate looking to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who right now is saying that they will vote no on any bill that comes with extra border wall funding. So we'll have to see what happens out of this meeting, Trace.
Edward Lawrence live for us on Capitol Hill. Edward, thank you. Coming up, much more from President Trump's cabinet meeting, including his comments on Kim Jong-un. The president says he's now ready to talk nukes with the North Korean leader again, as the dictator issues a warning to the U.S. in his New Year's address. Plus, starting a new job can be pretty tough sometimes, right? Figuring out your new responsibilities, organizing your desk, and perhaps deciding what to do about North Korea, Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. The challenges ahead for the acting Secretary of Defense. 25% of the government is shut down. The meeting is being held in the Situation Room, meaning that no cameras are allowed inside. But when the information begins trickling out, we, of course, will bring it to you throughout the hour. Meantime, President Trump now says he essentially fired his Defense Secretary, James Mattis. Mattis submitted his resignation letter the day after President Trump made a surprise announcement that he was going to pull U.S. troops out of Syria. Mattis was originally supposed to stay on through February. Then President Trump announced the Deputy Defense Secretary, Patrick Shanahan, would be taking over as acting secretary on January 1st. Lucas Tomlinson reporting live at the Pentagon. Lucas.
Trace, in his first meeting as acting defense secretary, Patrick Shanahan told senior leaders here to remember China, 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 in a sign that this new defense chief plans to ramp up focus on China. Now, Shanahan arrived at the Pentagon this morning bright and early at the Pentagon's river entrance at just before sunrise.
Priority number one. Job done. Take care.
And at the White House a short time ago, President Trump kept up to his attacks on his former defense secretary, Jim Mattis. The president says he fired Mattis.
What's he done for me? How has he done in Afghanistan? Not too good. Not too good. As you know, President Obama fired him, and essentially so did I. I want results.
Officials say Mattis submitted his resignation letter face-to-face to the president at the White House last month, and it wasn't forced. Trace?
And Luke, it's not a big surprise here, but China apparently is a big focus for the acting defense secretary.
Patrick Shanahan was a longtime executive at Boeing for over 30 years, so he knows what China's intellectual theft and property rights violation looks like firsthand. Now, in a big speech today in China, China's president says he told Taiwan not to declare independence.
The reunification is the historical trend and the right path, while Taiwan's independence.
One of the reasons Shanahan will be asking the president and Congress for billions more in defense spending to see if they can tackle the rise of China and Russia. Trace?
Lucas Tomlinson live for us at the Pentagon. Lucas, thank you. President Trump says he's ready to have another meeting with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. At his cabinet meeting, the president said he also got a great letter from the dictator. Just yesterday, Kim said he's willing to meet again, but also warned he may take a new path if the U.S. does not ease sanctions on North Korea. Rich Edson is reporting live at the White House. Rich.
Trace, President Trump says he's looking forward to meeting again with Kim Jong-un. He talked about that letter at this cabinet meeting with the North Korean dictator. In fact, he even brought the letter with him to the cabinet meeting.
I just got a great letter from Kim Jong-un, and those few people that I've shown this letter to, they've never written letters like that. This letter is a great letter. We've made a lot of progress with North Korea and Kim Jong-un. Chairman Kim has been, we've really established a very good relationship. A lot of good things are happening.
It's unclear when or where the president and Kim Jong-un will meet again, if they meet again. They last met in June at that summit in Singapore where they agreed to these broad outlines of a way to try to get North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons program. But implementing that has been a challenge, as North Korea really hasn't shown any significant sign that it is dismantling its nuclear program and its ballistic missile program. Officials do point out, though, that over the past year, in fact longer than that, North Korea has refrained from launching missiles or exploding nuclear weapons. The South Korean government says it also received a letter from Kim Jong-un, the president there, Moon Jae-in, and they said that the two presidents want to have more meetings coming up in 2019, Trace.
And Rich, Kim Jong-un kind of has a habit of sending mixed messages, but says that he is still committed to his agreement with the president, right?
That's right. And he says that in this address that Kim Jong-un gave on New Year's Day, his annual New Year's address, he says that he's open to these commitments that he made and that he wants to impress the world community and make positive outcomes for them. But he says he wants the United States to respond in kind. And what he's discussing there is he wants the U.S. and its allies to give up a number of the sanctions that it's had on North Korea. The problem is the U.S. administration has refused to do so until North Korea surrenders its nuclear weapons and ballistic missile program. The president at this cabinet meeting today spoke for more than a half hour on a number of different topics, from North Korea to Syria. He even mentioned Kanye West as part of all this, as Kanye has been tweeting support for the president. He says that Kanye West is a good guy. The president says he's smart and he sees what we're doing. So a little bit of everything here to start 2019 at the White House, Trace.
Kanye to North Korea. Rich Edson live for us at the White House. Rich, thank you. Well, Mitt Romney going after President Trump again, and the president firing back on Twitter. We'll look at their latest back and forth as Romney gets ready to join the Senate. And Senator Elizabeth Warren taking another step toward a possible White House run. She's heading to a key state of the 12-day partial government shutdown. It all comes down to funding for the border wall. Negotiations going on right now. It's in the Situation Room, meaning no cameras inside, but you see there is a camera position set up outside. And we believe when the meeting concludes that we will have people come to those microphones. And when we do, we'll bring it to you live. Meantime, the incoming Utah Senator Mitt Romney ripping into President Trump. The former Republican presidential nominee criticizing the president's character in an opinion piece for the Washington Post. President Trump, as you might imagine, firing back, pointing out that he won the White House and Romney didn't. The president also talked about Romney in his cabinet meeting not long ago. Ellison Barber is reporting live for us in Washington. Ellison.
Hi, Trey. So President Trump is telling Romney to be a team player and focus on issues that the president considers to be more important, things like border security. In that cabinet meeting, though, President Trump told reporters that if Romney fought like he is fighting right now, he would have beaten President Barack Obama. In the new Washington Post op-ed, the senator-elect says President Trump has not risen to the mantle of the office. Romney says December marked a deep descent for Trump's presidency and points to staff changes like the departure of Defense Secretary Jim Mattis as evidence. Romney claims President Trump's words and actions have caused dismay around the world, and that while he supports some of the president's policies and appointments of conservative judges, it is simply not enough. With the nation so divided, resentful, and angry, Romney writes, presidential leadership and qualities of character is indispensable, and it is in this province where the incumbent shortfall has been most glaring. President Trump endorsed Romney's Senate bid last year. Romney accepted the endorsement and thanked him for the support, but they've never really been best friends.
The bullying, the greed, the showing off, the misogyny, the absurd third-grade theatrics.
The guy's a stone-cold loser. He choked, and when you're a choker, you can never give a choker a second chance.
President in 2012, but in March of 2016, Romney said he would not have accepted Trump's endorsement back then if Trump had said 4 years ago the things that he says today. Trace?
And Ellison, how are other Republicans reacting to this back and forth?
Well, a lot of them are coming to the president's defense here, perhaps most notable Ronna Romney McDaniel. McDaniel is the chair of the Republican National Committee and the niece of Senator-elect Mitt Romney. She is siding with President Trump here instead of her uncle, tweeting this, quote, POTUS is attacked and obstructed by the mainstream media and Democrats 24/7 for an incoming Republican freshman senator to attack at real Donald Trump as their first act feeds into what the Democrats and media want and is disappointing and unproductive. Trace?
Ellison Barber, live in Washington. Ellison, thank you. Democratic Senator and possible presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren heading to Iowa, home of the nation's first presidential contest. That's according to the exploratory committee she launched 2 days ago. She's set to make stops in at least 2 cities this weekend. The Iowa caucus is scheduled for February 3rd of next year. David Spunt reporting live from Washington. David.
Good afternoon, Trace. Well, she announced that the final day of 2018, the past 2 days, as you said, she's been planning that trip to Iowa. A source with the state's Democratic Party told me she'll be there this weekend to not only meet with voters and party leaders, but she'll be there, of course, to fundraise. As of today, Warren is the highest profile Democratic candidate to announce an exploratory committee, meaning she can now accept donations, hire a staff for what could be a campaign. I'm told she'll make stops in Des Moines and Council Bluffs. Her team is working to firm up some other stops on the Iowa trip. Now, Warren has long been a target of President Trump and vice versa. She made a name for herself as an attorney and consumer advocate. Senator Warren continues to answer questions about a decades-old claim about her Native American heritage. She released results of a DNA test back in October that showed that she had Native American relatives 6 to 10 generations back. President Trump has repeatedly called Senator Warren Pocahontas. She's called him back, quote, a racist bully. In an interview with Fox News Monday night, President Trump said he hoped that Warren would run and he would love to run against her. Now, Warren did take to Instagram Monday evening to do a live chat from her kitchen about her presidential aspirations. At one point, Trace, she told those tuning in to hold on while she grabbed a beer. The live chat was reminiscent of Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke and incoming Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who have done similar live chats. Warren says she'll make more of a formal announcement in the coming weeks about a campaign. Important to note, Trace, that her hometown newspaper, the Boston Globe, urged her not to run, calling her a divisive figure. Trace.
And David, we'll be hearing from another potential Democratic candidate soon.
Yeah, that's true. Former HUD Secretary under President Barack Obama, Julian Castro, announced an exploratory committee actually a few weeks before Warren. His team just announced that he'll make a formal decision on Saturday, January 12th. Trace, back to you.
Yeah, David Spotton live for us in Washington. David, thank you. Breaking news right now in the final hour of trading on Wall Street. Let's take a live look at the Dow. Boy, it started off a little bit shaky this morning, and now it's, not great, not horrible. It's down about 90 points. The Dow has been on a very rough had a very rough ending of 2018, a little shaky coming out of 2019. This comes after stocks had their worst year in a decade. Christina Partsinevelos reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange. Christina.
I'm going to steal your line and say not horrible, because we did come off of those session lows where we saw the Dow down 400 points earlier today. There was a lot of volatility, still is, but traders today are saying that they are watching the White House because there continues to be news across the board. We know that we took the cabinet meeting live at 2 p.m. with the president, and that's immediately when you did see a downward trend. If we can bring up the Dow literally to show that green arrow on your screen, that's when the president spoke, went live, so you saw it move downwards afterwards. He did say that in December, the sell-off was due to a glitch. And then later on in the afternoon, he continued to say that they are working on the trade deals with China. So that was seen as a positive for the market. So traders reacted right away with the buying of certain stocks. But overall, if we're talking about China, the big fear in 2018, now in 2019, is this slowdown from the second largest economy in the world. And we had a PMI, which is the Purchasing Managers Index, that came out from China, showing that they further contracted. And if you look at that number versus the United States in this graph that we're going to show you in just a second, you can see the discrepancy, how it's starting to weaken in China, which is exemplified by the blue line. And then the United States also down today because we did receive manufacturing data for the United States, which came in lower for December compared to November. So you got a lot of graphs on the screen, got a lot of movement in the day. Another sector that moved too is the energy sector. Why is that? Earlier this morning, you had a report that Saudi Arabia is following through with its promises to cut production in December. So you received those numbers. That helped uptick the price of crude oil, which climbed a little bit higher, about 1.5% higher for the day, but still well off those highs that we saw in October, where it was $75 a barrel. And I know a lot of drivers are happy because that means lower gas for them, Trace.
Yeah, and the president himself said that he's the one that pushed those gas prices down. Christina Partsinevelos live for us at the Stock Exchange. Christina, thank you. Well, a lot happening in D.C. today with more to come on the partial government shutdown. President Trump meeting with lawmakers and refusing to back down on a border wall. We'll talk to a journalist who says it'll be hard for the president to find a win on that. Plus, the man accused of killing this police officer due in court today, and that country illegally when he shot Corporal Ron Singh during a traffic stop. Happened in Newman, California, which is east of San Jose. And William Lajeunesse is here with more on that.
So arraignment starts next hour. We'll hear the charges. He'll enter a plea and likely get an attorney. As for the state of California, well, that is hard to say what is going to happen. Both Governor Brown, the current governor, and the new governor, Gavin Newsom, claim that the sanctuary law improves public safety. Neither, however, addressed the killing of Officer Singh, nor have they talked about the claim that U.S. citizens would be alive today if not for the law. We did learn today that prosecutors may pursue the death penalty against Gustavo Perez Arriaga, the 33-year-old Mexican gang member accused of killing Singh after a stop for DUI. Arriaga has 2 DUI priors, one in 2011 in an accident, another driving without a license and speeding in 2014. Now, in most states, after a felony arrest, local police will tell ICE they'll put a hold on the inmate. When they bond out or the case is closed, the suspect is deported. Not here, obviously, in California, Trace, which the law prevents sheriffs from telling ICE when that individual is getting out. But, you know, the sheriffs objected when lawmakers passed this law and it didn't get anywhere.
Yeah, and what about those who helped him remain a fugitive?
Right. Well, so that is up in the air right now.
Yeah.
So Singh, Gustavo Perez faces potentially 25 years to life with possibility of parole.
Right.
However, with this enhancement that they're filing with, no parole or possibly the death penalty. As for those 7 others who helped him escape, including 2 brothers, a coworker, girlfriend, 3 others helped him hide while on the run. All are here illegally, but under California law, police are not allowed to ask a suspect their immigration status. Also, aiding and abetting or accessory after the fact are not deportable crimes, so the sheriff cannot call ICE when indeed they're going to be released on those charges, accessory after the fact and so forth. You're looking at maybe 1 to 3 years, but that again, ICE does not know when they're going to be released.
William Lajeunesse live for us here in L.A. William, thank you. Well, the U.S. Border Patrol firing tear gas at migrants at the southern...
Well, Tracy, it was very smoky. You saw in the video. Really hard to tell exactly what happened. Now, the Border Patrol says migrants threw the rocks first, and agents responded with tear gas and pepper spray. But both the AP and Reuters photographers dispute that version of events.
Defending the border.
And while we didn't hear of any major injuries, we know that most people turned back to Mexico. 25 were arrested at the border.
And of course, just a couple of months ago, we had that other tear gas incident down at the border.
Yeah, there was another group, a much larger group. Take a look at this. 9 out of 10 asylum seekers who request asylum after being arrested or detained are rejected. They don't have the right paperwork. They just don't have the wherewithal to make a proper case.
But nobody's telling these people as they get to the border that that's going to happen.
Nobody's
right?
telling them.
Anita Vogel live for us here. Anita, thank you very much. A Fox Urgent now, and we're waiting to see if we get an update from lawmakers at the White House on day 12 of the partial government shutdown. Let's bring in Anna Palmer. She's the senior Washington correspondent for Politico and co-author of Politico's Playbook newsletter. Anna, Happy New Year to you. Thank you for joining us. In this meeting today, what do you make of it? I mean, the Democrats are offering $1.3 billion in border wall funding. The Republicans, before they released or relinquished control of the House, passed a bill $5.6 billion. Do you think the president makes a counter offer in this meeting today, or does he stand pat to his $5.6 billion number?
It's hard to see that a lot is going to get done in this meeting. It's being described as a briefing where there's an expectation that there's going to be an update on what's happening down on the U.S.-Mexico border. And so I think Democrats are already coming into this meeting. We've heard a lot of signals from the Capitol Hill today saying we are going to push back on the president if this is a partisan kind of review of what's happening down there. And they said they'll do that in the meeting and they'll do that after the meeting. So already you're seeing the two sides aren't really coming together to compromise. They're kind of very entrenched in their two sides as they just start the negotiations again after the holiday break.
What's the goal, Anna, for Nancy Pelosi? Okay, she starts tomorrow. Then they're going to pass these two bills. What's her goal coming out of this meeting? Is she going to come out of there saying, look, we are standing firm? Is that what she wants the optic to be at the end of the day?
Listen, I think Nancy Pelosi is going to be speaker tomorrow. If everything goes in her favor, as it appears that it will be. And so she's going to put these two bills forward. I think it's a package that she thinks, listen, we're putting this forward for the president. They need to react to that. Even, I mean, in all the signs point to the Capitol saying the White House needs to tell us what they need, and they need to have a compromise that we can actually move forward on this funding package. But this is not something that Pelosi wants to be spending months and months on. You know, she has an entire new liberal flank coming in. They have a lot of things that they want to be passing. And kind of as this government shutdown continues to kind of go forward, it's going to be harder and harder for them to have any kind of agenda going into 2019.
Yeah, lastly on this subject, do you think, you listen to Newt Gingrich and Lindsey Graham, and they're talking about, you know, if there's a deal on the Dreamers, if the president will say, look, let's get this deal put together on the Dreamers, that maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room on that border wall funding?
You know, the Democrats have been very hard to say that they are not going to try to tie DACA to the border wall. I also sat down with the president before the holidays in an interview, and he said on DACA that he wanted it to go through the courts, and then he thought once that happened that they could find a deal on that. So he at that point was not looking to tie those two issues together. So I think it's pretty unlikely that a deal comes together around that.
A couple of things. What do you make of this back and forth between Mitt Romney, who's about to take office tomorrow, and the president?
Well, they've had some fireworks before, so I don't know that it's necessarily that surprising that they're on different sides of things. But certainly a shot across the bow before he's even sworn into office. Mitt Romney kind of laying down where he stands, how he sees the president, and the president responding in kind, shooting messages across Twitter. So I think there's going to be a lot of issues there. A lot of senators you've already seen, Rand Paul and others come forward saying this is not what we need. We need to find ways as Republicans to stand together. But clearly Mitt Romney looking to be his own man as he is sworn in as the senator of Utah.
Are you surprised that all the White House repeatedly said that the Defense Secretary Mattis he retired, and President Trump came out today and said, nope, I essentially fired him? Surprised you at all?
Well, I think clearly there is some bad blood there. The first tweet after he resigned, the president had a very nice response, and then there's been some shots going back and forth. And so I don't know that it's that surprising when somebody attacks the president or doesn't like how he's led, whether it's in the administration or externally. He's not one who's shy to punch back.
Yeah, the senior Washington correspondent for Politico, Anna Palmer. Anna, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well, a former United States Marine held in Russia and accused of spying. Now there's word the U.S. ambassador has met with him. We'll look at whether Vladimir Putin is just trying for some payback. Next. And that's a live look again at the White House outside the West Wing. The president and top lawmakers from both parties are inside the Situation Room trying to resolve this 12-day partial government shutdown. A big sticking point here, of course, is funding for the border wall. No cameras allowed inside the Situation Room, so when they come outside, you see the microphones there, we will bring that to you live. Meantime, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the United States may demand the immediate release of a former Marine in Moscow if the detention is not appropriate. Officials in Russia accuse Paul Whelan of traveling to Moscow for a spy mission, but his family says he was there for a wedding. Benjamin Hall reporting live with the latest. Benjamin.
Yeah, hi, Trace. And the first anyone knew that Paul Whelan had gone missing was when he failed to show up for that wedding, and that's when the alarm bells started to ring. Paul Whelan, as you said, is a 48-year-old former Marine. He served 2 tours in Iraq. He actually received a bad conduct discharge, which is when he left the Marines. He has since been working in corporate security for a Michigan-based auto parts supplier called Borg Warner, and his family have totally denied he has anything to do with spying. The Russian Federal Security Service announced his arrest on their website 3 days after Whelan suddenly disappeared. Again, no one knew anything about him, where he was till that point. They said only that he was caught during an espionage operation. Earlier, we heard from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who addressed the case.
We've made clear to the Russians our expectation, and if the detention is not appropriate, we will demand his immediate return.
And we've also heard that Ambassador Huntsman, the U.S. ambassador to Russia, has been to visit Paul Whelan in the detention facility. He's expressed his support. He's offered the embassy's help. He's also spoken to the family. But this spying charge comes with a 20-year possible sentence. Trace?
And Benjamin, what does this mean for U.S.-Russia relations, potentially?
It's very hard to know how this will play out at this point. Relations between the two countries have been at a real low point recently. A few weeks ago, a Russian citizen living in the U.S., Maria Butina, was arrested and admitted to acting as a secret agent on behalf of the Kremlin. She had been trying to infiltrate U.S. political groups, and some experts are now saying that this arrest is in response to that. U.S. and Russian relations have deteriorated greatly over recent years over, for example, Russian meddling in U.S. elections, Russia's aggressive actions in Ukraine, the poisoning of a former Russian spy in the UK, which itself led to 100 tit-for-tat diplomatic expulsions. And just last week, in his Christmas address, President Putin said that Russia would never arrest an innocent person just to exchange him for someone else. Well, experts again saying that seems to be exactly what's happened here. Trace?
Benjamin Hall live for us in London. Benjamin, thank you. I want to go back to the White House very quickly here because there are some signals here. As we told you for the past hour, that's outside the West Wing. Congressional leaders meeting with the president about border security. That's the big sticking point in this partial government shutdown. But now indications that Mike Pence, the vice president's motorcade, has pulled up outside, an indication the meeting could be wrapping up. We'll get to more on that on the other side of a break. With congressional leaders, let's bring in our senior producer for Capitol Hill, Chad Pergram. Chad, getting some indications that the meeting might be wrapping up after 50 or so minutes. What do you foresee? Resolution, stalemate? Give us your insight.
I just talked to one senior House Republican member who said that they thought that the president was going to stand firm and that we might be in for the longest government shutdown in history. Now, the next movement here is going to be tomorrow when the Democrats control the House of Representatives. Late tomorrow afternoon, they're going to pass 2 bills, one to deal with 6 of the appropriations bills which are outstanding, and then a separate interim bill to fund the government, the Department of Homeland Security, through February 8th. Now, Democrats will try to put some pressure on Senate Republicans and say, wait a minute, those are the same bills which you either moved across the Senate floor or in committee. We've passed them here in the House. Why don't we continue to fight a little bit about the Department of Homeland Security? We'll deal with it again in early February, but let's reopen that part of the government. I'm told by senior Republicans here that they think that's a terrible bit of strategy because then they would lose all leverage in this partial government shutdown. But nobody really thought that anything was going to be resolved in this meeting today. This is the first time that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi were hearing from President Trump, Trace, before the government shutdown started before Christmas. And keep in mind that Republican leaders here on Capitol have basically checked out. We haven't seen House Speaker Paul Ryan lately. We haven't seen House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Ryan won't be in Congress tomorrow at noon, and he's basically washed his hands, absolved himself of this entire situation since the government shut down about 12, 13 days ago.
Yeah, you make a great point. 22 days, the president has had zero contact with either Pelosi or Schumer. But what's the sweet spot here, Chad? I mean, you're talking to people up there. The president said earlier there were reports that $2.5 billion might be his red line. Well, he said no way. He wants $5.6 billion. Is there a sweet spot for both sides that maybe we can see some kind of resolution down the next 4 or 5 days?
This is where we were starting to hear some chatter late last week that some bipartisan senators thought there might be a deal to be had on DACA. And now that the government shutdown is truly real, government workers are really off the job now. There's no more holiday recess. Members of Congress are coming back into session. That might help force the issue. Sometimes you have unconnected issues which help resolve these partial government shutdowns. But nobody really thought that anything was going to come out of this until Nancy Pelosi gets control of the gavel tomorrow afternoon, probably 1:30, 2 o'clock. And then the Democrats, all these new Democrats in the House of Representatives, take their first vote to reopen the government. Their plan, not a bipartisan plan, but their plan to reopen the government and make a point that one of their first votes in Congress was to turn this around on President Trump and say it's your shutdown. We voted to reopen the government, and we did not reward you with any new border wall funding. Trace.
Chad, I got to go, but very quickly, who does this benefit? The longer the government stays partially shut down, which side benefits?
Well, Republicans can try to turn this around on Nancy Pelosi. They've used this playbook before, point out that she's now the Speaker of the House, and now she owns it. That's why Republicans here on Capitol Hill were trying to absolve themselves of this the past couple of days, because they can say, wait a minute, she bears some of the responsibility, despite what the president said a couple of weeks ago. She's the Speaker of the House. They've used this tactic against her before, and they're going to try to do it again.
Our senior Capitol Hill producer, Chad Pergam. Chad, good of you. I want to go quickly to the Dow, the corner of Wall and Broad. It was almost even. Now it's down about 30 points. If it's not down 400 these days, that's a good time. I'm Trace Gallagher in for Shepard Smith. Your World with Neil Cavuto is next.